Indian Rebellion of 1857. Reaction in Britain. The scale of the punishments handed out by the British Army of Retribution were considered largely appropriate and justified in a Britain shocked by embellished reports of atrocities carried out against British and British civilians by the rebels. Accounts of the time frequently reached the hyperbolic register, according to Christopher Herbert, especially in the often repeated claim that the Red Year of 1857 marked a terrible break in British experience. Such was the atmosphere, a national mood of retribution and despair that led to almost universal approval of the measures taken to pacify the revolt. Incidents of rape allegedly committed by Indian rebels against British women and girls appalled the British public. These atrocities were often used to justify the British reaction to the rebellion. British newspapers printed various eyewitness accounts of the rape of English women and girls. One such account was published by The Times, regarding an incident where 48 English girls as young as 10 had been raped by Indian rebels in Delhi. Karl Marx criticized this story as false propaganda and pointed out that the story was written by a clergyman in Bangalore, far from the events of the rebellion, with no evidence to support his allegation. Individual incidents captured the public's interest and were heavily reported by the press. One such incident was that of General Wheeler's daughter Margaret being forced to live as her captor's concubine, though this was reported to the Victorian public as Margaret killing her rapist then herself. Another version of the story suggested that Margaret had been killed after her abductor had argued with his wife over her. During the aftermath of the rebellion, a series of exhaustive investigations were carried out by British police and intelligence officials into reports that British women prisoners had been dishonored at the Bibighar and elsewhere. One such detailed inquiry was at the direction of Lord Canning. The consensus was that there was no convincing evidence of such crimes having been committed, although numbers of British women and children had been killed outright. The term sepoy or sepoyism became a derogatory term for nationalists, especially in Ireland. Reorganization. Bahadur Shah was arrested at Humayun's tomb and tried for treason by a military commission assembled at Delhi and exiled to Rangoon, where he died in 1862, bringing the Mughal dynasty to an end. In 1877, Queen Victoria took the title of Empress of India on the advice of Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. The rebellion saw the end of the East India Company's rule in India. In August, by the Government of India Act 1858, the company was formally dissolved and its ruling powers over India were transferred to the British Crown. A new British government department, the India Office, was created to handle the governance of India, and its head, the Secretary of State for India, was entrusted with formulating Indian policy. The Governor-General of India gained a new title, Viceroy of India, and implemented the policies devised by the India Office. Some former East India Company territories, such as the Straits Settlements, became colonies in their own right. The British colonial administration embarked on a program of reform, trying to integrate Indian higher castes and rulers into the government and abolishing attempts at westernization. The Viceroy stopped land grabs, decreed religious tolerance and admitted Indians into civil service, albeit mainly as subordinates. Essentially, the old East India Company bureaucracy remained, though there was a major shift in attitudes. In looking for the causes of the rebellion, the authorities alighted on two things: religion and the economy. On religion, it was felt that there had been too much interference with indigenous traditions, both Hindu and Muslim. On the economy, it was now believed that the previous attempts by the company to introduce free market competition had undermined traditional power structures and bonds of loyalty, placing the peasantry at the mercy of merchants and money lenders. In consequence, the new British Raj was constructed in part around a conservative agenda, based on a preservation of tradition and hierarchy. On a political level, it was also felt that the previous lack of consultation between rulers and ruled had been another significant factor in contributing to the uprising. In consequence, Indians were drawn into government at a local level. Though this was on a limited scale, a crucial precedent had been set, with the creation of a new, white-collar, Indian elite, further stimulated by the opening of universities at Calcutta, Bombay and Madras, a result of the Indian Universities Act. So, alongside the values of traditional and ancient India, a new professional middle class was starting to arise, in no way bound by the values of the past. Their ambition can only have been stimulated by Queen Victoria Proclamation of November 1858, in which it is expressly stated, "We hold ourselves bound to the natives of our Indian territories by the same obligations of duty which bind us to our other subjects. It is our further will that, our subjects of whatever race or creed, be freely and impartially admitted to offices in our service, the duties of which they may be qualified by their education, ability and integrity, duly to discharge." Acting on these sentiments, Lord Ripon, Viceroy from 1880 to 1885, extended the powers of local self-government and sought to remove racial practices in the law courts by the Ilbert Bill. But a policy at once liberal and progressive at one turn was reactionary and backward at the next, creating new elites and confirming old attitudes. The Ilbert Bill had the effect only of causing a white mutiny and the end of the prospect of perfect equality before the law. In 1886, measures were adopted to restrict Indian entry into the civil service. Military reorganization. The Bengal Army dominated the Indian Army before 1857, and a direct result after the rebellion was the scaling back of the size of the Bengali contingent in the army. The Brahmin presence in the Bengal Army was reduced because of their perceived primary role as mutineers. The British looked for increased recruitment in the Punjab for the Bengal Army as a result of the apparent discontent that resulted in the Sepoy conflict. The rebellion transformed both the native and British armies of British India. Of the 74 regular Bengal native infantry regiments in existence at the beginning of 1857, only 12 escaped mutiny or disbandment. All 10 of the Bengal light cavalry regiments were lost. The old Bengal army had accordingly almost completely vanished from the order of battle. These troops were replaced by new units recruited from castes hitherto underutilized by the British and from the minority so-called martial races, such as the Sikhs and the Gurkhas. The inefficiencies of the old organization, which had estranged sepoys from their British officers, were addressed, and the post-1857 units were mainly organized on the irregular system. From 1797 until the rebellion of 1857, each regular Bengal native infantry regiment had 22 or 23 British officers, who held every position of authority down to the second in command of each company. In irregular units there were fewer British officers, but they associated themselves far more closely with their soldiers, while more responsibility was given to the Indian officers. The British increased the ratio of British to Indian soldiers within India. From 1861, Indian artillery was replaced by British units, except for a few mountain batteries. The post-rebellion changes formed the basis of the military organization of British India until the early 20th century. Awards. Victoria Cross. Medals were awarded to members of the British Armed Forces and the British Indian Army during the rebellion. The 182 recipients of the Victoria Cross are listed here. Indian Mutiny Medal. 290,000 Indian Mutiny Medals were awarded. Clasps were awarded for the Siege of Delhi and the Siege and Relief of Lucknow. Indian Order of Merit. A military and civilian decoration of British India, the Indian Order of Merit was first introduced by the East India Company in 1837 and was taken over by the Crown in 1858, following the Indian Mutiny of 1857. The Indian Order of Merit was the only gallantry medal available to native soldiers between 1837 and 1907. Nomenclature. There is no universally agreed name for the events of this period. In India and Pakistan it has been termed as the War of Independence of 1857 or First War of Indian Independence, but it is not uncommon to use terms such as the Revolt of 1857. The classification of the rebellion being First War of Independence is not without its critics in India. The use of the term Indian Mutiny is considered by some Indian politicians as belittling the importance of what happened and therefore reflecting an imperialistic attitude. Others dispute this interpretation. In the UK and parts of the Commonwealth it is commonly called the Indian Mutiny, but terms such as Great Indian Mutiny, the Sepoy Mutiny, the Sepoy Rebellion, the Sepoy War, the Great Mutiny, the Rebellion of 1857, the Uprising, the Mohammedan Rebellion, and the Revolt of 1857 have also been used. The Indian Insurrection was a name used in the press of the UK and British colonies at the time.